To WTJU. Thanks so much to Michael for sending things down here to the stage where we've got David Wax Museum who's gearing up for a big tour ahead of their CD release. But before I chat with y'all, how about y'all kick off with something?
Love that. Best lover I never had. Best lover, oh, best lover I never had. Best lover, oh. Sweetest lips I never tasted. I don't consider any of it wasted. Parts of me, she awakened. There's a little part that I'll never stop waiting for. Best lover I never had. Best lover, oh, best lover I never had. Best lover, oh. Never had the chance to see if this love existed. Never had the chance for things to get ugly and twisted. Held on to the fantasy of what could have been. Wearing her outline, a second skin. Best lover I never had. Best lover, oh, best lover I never had. Best lover, oh. The night was holding its breath. The night was holding its breath, waiting to see what she or I might confess. Never had the chance, never had the chance. Parts of me still aching, parts of me still waiting. Best lover I never had. Best lover, oh, oh, best lover I never had. Best lover, oh, best lover, 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 best lover.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, radio listeners and live audience.
Live here at WTJU, the sounds of David Wax Museum, doing a track from their brand new album, You Must Change Your Life, called Best Lover, and that album's coming out May 5th. So, first of all, welcome back to WTJU.
Great to be back. I love this space. And yeah, we're so happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Well, that's David, in case you can't guess. David Wax at David Wax Museum. On the other side, Suz Slezak.
Hey, everyone. So nice to be back.
Thrilled to get you both back here. And let's start with the name of this album and how it came to be. David.
Well, it's a line from the great poet Rilke. It's at the end of the archaic torso of Apollo. And it's just a line that's always resonated for me. In the poem, it's about the power of art and the way that art sees inside our souls and alters us forever because of that. And my personal journey has been greatly impacted by my relationship with art and music and the journey that it's taken me on. And so I've always wanted to figure out a way to kind of bring a line like that into the song, but it always just kind of felt too heavy, too kind of self-serious. And so I kind of imagined a character that could inhabit that's, you know, echoes of myself and echoes of our culture. And then as we were working on the song and then kind of thinking about this body of work, so much of the resonant themes are about change, personal kind of growth and rediscovery in these kind of dramatic moments of life. And so it felt like a fitting title for this collection of songs.
And it became even more so because you had some health issues.
Well, yeah, when you get a good title like this, it kind of continues to resonate throughout, no matter what happens in your life. First, we recorded this before the pandemic, so
Right.
Then all of a sudden it took on a different meaning and layer of significance for all of us as we were thinking about releasing this record. And then I find myself, kind of carried into the emergency room, and all this fear and concern after I'd collapsed, if I'd had a heart attack, if there was something dramatic going on, and I think that's the kind of moment where most people it's a wake up call. You're like, all right, I have to you realize your mortality kind of comes staring you right in the face, and you make dramatic changes. And I don't, my story is not one of making dramatic changes, but it was, I think that those dramatic changes had already happened in my life. So when that kind of moment happened, that health scare, I'd kind of already had these big shifts in my life that had reoriented me. So it wasn't one of those moments, but...
What would you say was going through your mind at that moment?
I was just so glad that I'd made this record. And if I died, then I felt like I'd accomplished something of great worth.
No big deal. This record's not that big of a deal for David.
Well, before I knew about the health, had just been looking back at the 15 years of David Wax Museum, and change has always been there. Some folks still say American, but to me, your sound, sure, it had that in the early days, and it's still there, but it's just evolved and changed in so many ways. And so before I knew about your health issues, and I didn't know about the poetry, but it was just the change that I've just seen within the group. And so it seemed a perfect title for this album as well. So
thank you. Yeah, I think that's well put. We don't like to stand still, and I think creatively staying still isn't not very sustaining or exciting for us. And I've loved the journey that we've been on as a band. And sometimes, I was just thinking the other day about some email I got from someone that it's been a while, but it still kind of like pings me in a certain way when someone's like, I used to love your band, and now I feel like I've lost my favorite band. And as you change, that happens sometimes. Like you lose people, but then you're always gaining new people that come to what you're doing, and what you have to follow what you're excited about,
right,
and grow in the ways that are true to yourself.
And to follow up on that, poor David got one email that said, I lost my favorite band, and like 100 that say, I love your band. So typical human brains, like, oh, the one criticism is so big, hurts so much. I only say that because I relate with my own hooks.
Well, Suz, I want to bring up, the two of you, 15 years really is David Wax Museum, and what for you has been the overriding change over these 15 years?
I think for me is coming into my own as an artist. At the beginning, the David Wax Museum was sort of the umbrella that we lived under, and everything was in support of that band. Our whole life was around touring and even having kids. We were like, all right, we got to stagger these kids between records. Let's put out Knock Knock It Up, then we can have this baby, then we can make this record, then we can have the next baby. Tour with them, but not tour too hard, but pretty much tour really hard no matter what. Not really take any time off from maternity leave because the next tour is happening. And that was all well and good and our choice. And I'm really proud of what we did. But a dear friend and mentor, Ben Coe, who lives here in Charlottesville, told us recently that rather than David Wax Museum as being the umbrella we live under, we could be Suz and David as two artists, and David Wax Museum is one thing that we do. And that I really took that to heart, and so did David. And for me, that's meant coming into my own as a solo artist and putting out my first solo album, which I was only able to make because we were home from the road for the pandemic, and I was able to focus on that and not focus on hauling kids around the country in a van. And also coming into my own as a writer, I started a Substack, kind of a modern day blog, where I'm posting prose writing. and that's feeling very satisfying. And just for me to really come into maturity as a violin player and get all my new pedals and my amp and feel like my palette has expanded a lot, and that's felt very satisfying, to feel really confident about giving out any emotion I choose. Not every day, but when I'm really in the flow, covering a whole emotional gamut on my instrument and feeling like, oh, I see what they mean when you can express yourself with your instrument, whereas before I was playing notes, in my opinion.
Well, speaking of notes, I have more notes I want to get to, but how about we hear some musical notes from you first?
Great. We're going to play, the title track of this album is called You Must Change Your Life.
Hey, hey. Right?
Yeah.
Going through the motions, trying to pay the bills. Nothing too fancy, wearing shirts with less frills. Nothing's really clicking, you're in a funk. Feel like an iceberg that just lost a chunk. You must change your life. You must change your life. Well, we all got drunk, but only your face has a gash. Now you're breathing through a snorkel in an Epsom salt bath. Moved into a tent on your back porch, but it's so hard to sleep with your neighbor's tiki torch. Oh, you must change your life. You must change your life. It's never too late, never too late. What are you waiting for? It's never too late, never too late. What are you waiting for? Losing the kick in your pour over soul, willing like the greens in your macrobiotic bowl, playing a part when someone's feeding you the lines, looking for the exit but you can't read the signs. You must change your life. You must change your life. It's never too late, never too late. What are you waiting for? It's never too late, never too late. What are you waiting for? It's never too late, never too late, never too late, never too late. You must change your life. Thank you.
The title track to David Wax Museum's new album, You Must Change Your Life, coming out May 5th, and they're getting ready to start a big tour on the 5th up in New York City, and it's going to go all the way through, including, May
5th
3rd.
is DC. May 3rd is New York, and 5th will be in DC,
Right.
and
Thank you.
6th right here in Charlottesville.
There we go.
The big one.
I've got to start looking at my notes. As I said, I had lots of notes, and obviously I wasn't looking at them. So thank you to Suz for pointing that out. Indeed. And that's going to run all the way through into Missouri, where I believe David's from. And,
That's right.
you're talking about David and Suz, the change, and Suz talked about the one negative email and the 100. I'd make that 101. I've just loved, I remember seeing you before, but not actually getting to meet you really until I think it was Floyd Fest back in 2011 or so, and just watching your change. And I've just loved every new album that's come out. And so
thank you.
I appreciate that you haven't been stagnant. There's a lot of acts, they find that sound, and it's just been a joy.
Thanks, Peter. Although I knew you, of course, growing up here listening to WTJU and saving all my allowance to donate to the station at every fund drive. Just pointing that out.
Well, I appreciate that.
And getting my free CD and free T-shirt.
Absolutely. Well, let's just talk about your album there for a second, Suz. You talked about getting a chance to find your own self during the pandemic, and because you're not on the road so much. And of course, you had the children's album that came out a little while ago, but Our Wings May Be Featherless. And was this album also recorded in your own studio as the new one, or had you?
You Must Change Your Life, the band album, was recorded before the pandemic in a wonderful studio in Richmond called Montrose.
Okay.
And my album, we did during the pandemic in our little attic.
Right.
And we did it remotely with producer Anthony DaCosta in Nashville. So that means that at night after the kids were asleep, David and I would go upstairs and, with our one little microphone set up and pretty simple, very simple setup, would record vocals and fiddle, send it to Anthony. He would add all sorts of texture, lushness, and all his musical doodads that he adds to albums to make them beautiful, and send it back to us, and we'd add more things. So it was really a home studio production.
Well, you mentioned Anthony DaCosta, and I think he's part of your band that's going to be out touring. Is that right, David?
That's right. We're going to be playing here on the 6th at the Southern with our 6-piece band. So with Alex Spiegelman on bass clarinet and saxophone, Anthony DaCosta on electric guitar, and we'll have a great electric bass player and drummer as well with us.
And all the details on that can be found, of course, at davidwaxmuseum.com, but also thesouthernseaville.com. And we've got a link up at WTJU.net as well. Well, David, I mentioned the Mexico-Americana sound that you had early on, but you just for those who don't know your sound, maybe just tuning in for the first time, you did really spend some time down in Mexico, which got the juices flowing. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. I started going down in 2001, spending my summers down in Mexico. And I was just fortunate enough to end up living with a family of musicians that first summer I went down there who played this style of music called Wapango music. And I loved it. It just got, a certain part of my brain kind of fired up and curious, and it was part of a whole sense of falling in love with Mexico and Mexican culture and Spanish, and wanting to just have a deeper understanding of what I was encountering and what was so stimulating and challenging to my kind of very coming from Central Missouri in a kind of sheltered background, and so I kept going down to Mexico, kept getting deeper into the music, and kind of initially began to conceive of this band and have a vision for starting a band once I got back to Boston that would somehow bring the Mexican instruments and song structures and rhythms into an Americana or indie folk band. And so that has continued to be an influence to varying degrees as we've made the records. I feel like what excites me about this record is that it's distilled and kind of there's a maturation of it when it does come into play, but I feel like we're not beholden to it, and that we've kind of figured out a relationship where it makes sense, where it's some songs are very explicitly about it or inspired by it, but then all of our other influences are present on the other songs, and it's not forced in any way.
Yeah, and that is very natural, and that leads me to the question of, for you both, what do you find yourself listening to when you're not working on your own music, or have the children invaded what's played at the house and in the van?
Well, the most exciting thing to me right now is radio with lots of O's at the end of it. And it's like you choose a region of the world and a time frame, and then it just plays a radio station for you that it makes as if you were in Brazil in the 1940s. Wow. And I just find that like listening to stuff, especially that's not in English, it's really hard for me to listen to English lyrics right now. But to just kind of the most kind of as wide of a spectrum of like rural folk music from all over the world, or just sounds that I have not heard before. That's the most exciting thing to me.
I have to say I love that, because the idea of not having the English lyrics there to, I don't want to say distract, but sometimes it's wonderful to hear the voice and try to figure out what it is they're bringing to us. in that language that I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, Suz?
I don't find myself drawn to listening to music much. And I think that as I'm getting older, I realize that kind of how sensitive I am in lots of ways and how overstimulated I can get. And because music and practicing and talking about it and living in it is such a huge portion of my consciousness pie.
So you turn that part of yourself
So
off.
I feel like for me, writing music only happens out of silence. That's the only time I would feel the need to produce music. And so I'm always looking for more quiet because there's so much natural music in my life.
So do you find yourself going on walks, or how do you find that ability to find that silence for yourself?
There's not much of it.
Okay.
But I
No,
also
I'd say-
forbid music in the house.
Sue spends the majority of her time in the garden. I feel like that's your...
The
and-
Morning Doves are my biggest musical influences at the moment.
Well, those just tuning in, thank you. Yeah, well,
Although lower. Working on it.
no, absolutely. No, you're right there. I'm out there and with my dogs in my canoe every morning, paddling around, listening to all the birds. So the morning doves follow us along, although they're not quite over the water. So, well, those just tuning in, we do have David Wax Museum with us. That's David Wax and Sue Slezak. They are preparing to gear up for a big tour that is behind this fantastic new album, You Must Change Your Life. And I'm actually holding vinyl, and I'm reminded last year, every single folk act that came through, and some jazz acts as well, said they wanted vinyl, but it was Adele had booked every pressing facility, and then it became Harry Styles. And so how did you manage to get vinyl is what I'm asking.
We knew the right people.
Oh,
you
Local
know.
connection. It was a local
Yeah,
connection.
Blue Sprocket. We just talked to them so far in advance. This record
Okay.
has been recorded, has been done for so long, and the pandemic was the main delay for it coming out into the world. So that gave us a lot of time to get those kind of ducks in a row.
And so this is, of course, as I said, available on vinyl, CD, digital, and they can find that all over on your website, David Wax Museum. And this particular album is this your first time working with this label, or is this
No,
one
this
of your
is
long
our
time?
third record because they put
Okay.
out Suz's solo record and Line
Okay.
of Light. So it's a long-term relationship now.
And that is on 9 Mile Records.
Out of Austin, Texas. Yep.
Well, I've got folks staring at me saying, stop talking, let them play. So I think I'm going to do that. We've got David Wax Museum. What are you going to do for us next?
This is a song called Be Patient from the new record. I know love is coming for you. You tell yourself it can't be true. But I know love is coming for you. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Don't tell me that you're unworthy. After drought, we all get thirsty. Don't tell me that you're unworthy. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. The sky's on fire, your heart's a diamond. The belt's unbuckled on Orion. The birds are flying backwards towards the light. Well, the world is hot and getting hotter. There's meaning shifting worldwide bother. Still you gotta believe with all your might. Gotta believe. Gotta believe. And be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. You've buried your hopes down so deep. These shapeless dreams, they haunt your sleep. You've buried your hopes down so deep, but be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Be patient. Thank you.
I'm just going to say to the audience, see, you were patient and you were rewarded for it. So we've got David Wax Museum here up on the stage. And as you were singing that, I looked back and I saw you've got a box set. And I was reminded Gillian Welch and David Rawlings were, their early times were here in Charlottesville, and they played at the Prism Coffee House. And David in '97 made the joke, they were talking about, they had been opening for Johnny Cash. And then they were talking about Bob Dylan, and they're talking about, oh, isn't it amazing that you can buy somebody's full life on a box set? And and David said, well, you can buy ours for $10. They only had the one album, but you've got enough vinyl now where you've got a box set.
We've got six records plus Suz's 7 records there you could buy from us. So that's our top selling item. So we're very proud of it, and yeah, I think that it's. There's a couple other records that we haven't gotten to press on vinyl yet, but I don't know. Yeah, there's something. The other day we were just lining up all of our CDs and having, a moment to kind of reflect on having 12 different records to sell on the merch table after doing this for 15, 16 years together.
I was shocked. I couldn't believe there were that many. If I had to guess, I'd be like, maybe 9. This stack of albums.
Someone is insatiable in this band, and...
Those of you not in the listening audience, I'm pointing at David.
And we have many other records that are done or in progress right now as well. And now that we have our recording studio in our backyard, we're hoping to keep that pace up. So we'll see how it goes.
As long as we find the compromise between insatiable and satiable over here.
Well, those just tuning in, you are listening to WTJU Charlottesville. We've got David Wax Museum up here on the stage. And we've talked about all these years, and I think I saw something about being up in Nome, Alaska, and then having a different time, 1,000 Chechens singing your lyrics back to you. So what has been one of the more unique memories for you over these decades, where you've played and what's happened around that?
Well, one of my favorite places to play in America is in Thomas, West Virginia at the Purple Fiddle. And I feel like that's one that people like here in Charlottesville could drive to and experience that. It's one of the kind of gems on the eastern side of the Mississippi. This beautiful little mountain town that's just about 2.5 hours from here, and they have music almost every night of the week there. And the weekends, it gets kind of rowdy, and it's like one of the few places where people come out and dance all night long. So I've had some of my favorite shows there, in a place that's not that far for Charlottesvillians. So consider making a trip to the Purple Fiddle.
Suz?
Some of my favorite shows have actually been recently, where I was saying I've sort of grown into playing my violin in this more soulful way and kind of more connected way. And recently I've had these moments where on this one song where I play this long solo outro, I've had this moment where David, the song is called Helen, Can You Forgive Me? And it's, about this kind of romance, but heartbreak and breakup. And David, the chorus is Helen, Can You Forgive Me for breaking your heart? And I had this moment recently where, sorry, mine is such a personal thing. It's not about the audience or anything. I had this moment where I decided on the spot that when David did the final Helen, Can You Forgive Me for Breaking Your Heart line, and it was my turn to take the outro, I just embodied Helen through the voice of my fiddle and just explained to him all that had happened, how I felt when it happened, what that meant to me and how at the end of that solo, I was not going to forgive him. And my violin said all that, and I was like along for the ride, and it was extremely powerful and very moving, and I was like shuddering at the end of it.
Well, this is why live music is important, folks.
100%. Way to go, Peter.
So you want to get out to the Southern on May 6th or wherever else they might be playing, because the recordings are lovely, but it's the experience when you catch the group performing that you're going to hear that special end to a story like that. And speaking of ends, might we get one more before you head off and pick up
we'd
your
love
kids?
that. We'd love that. This is another one from the new record. It's called Luann, and it goes like this. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't care if your old lovers couldn't all fit in one room. Who cares if they're tired, still licking their love wounds? I know you don't like it when I speak in absolutes. I could walk away from everything, but I could never walk away from you. Luann, Luann, shapeshifter, fate twister, there's no one swifter than my truth sifter. No one gets me off like you. Luann, Luann, dream drifter, seam ripper, queen of the whisper. It's not too late for us, we can still change our mind. People like to talk, but they have no clue. Oh, the things they would say if they really knew what the world holds up, inconsequential and cruel. I could walk away from everything, but I could never walk away from you. Luann, Luann, shapeshifter, fate twister, there's no one swifter than my truth sifter. No one gets me off like you. Luann, Luann, dream drifter, seam ripper, queen of the whisper. It's not too late for us, we can still change our mind. Shapeshifter, fate twister, there's no one swifter than I. Truth sifter, no one gets me off like you. Luann, Luann, dream drifter, seam ripper, queen whisper. It's not too late for us, we can still change our mind. Luann.
Luann from David Wax Museum, live here at WTJU. You must change your life and get out and catch these folks, no matter where they might be playing. And, of course, pick up a copy of that new album coming out May 5th. David Wax, Suz Slezak, thanks for stopping by WTJU.
Oh, thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much,
us back.
Peter.
We're going to send things back up to Michael in the air studio.